The Thunderbird Investigation. A cryptozoologist's account. Brendan Winchester, field researcher. Field report, Thunderbird of the Northern Rockies. Flathead Indian Reservation, Montana. January-March 2035. Prologue moving forward. 3 years since Bray Road. That's the thought I keep returning to as I prepare for my most challenging investigation yet. 3 years of growth, learning, therapy, and slowly transforming from the arrogant disaster who got his best friend mauled into someone who might actually be competent at this work. The Loveland frog investigation went well. Modest results achieved through proper methodology. No one hurt, genuine improvement demonstrated. Dr. Martinez was pleased enough to approve this next step. Investigating the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird is significant in multiple ways. It's reported across numerous Native American cultures, particularly in the Pacific Northwest and Northern Plains regions. It's described as an enormous bird wingspan of 15 to 20 feet or more, with features that don't match any known species. Some accounts describe it as resembling a massive eagle or condor. Others suggest something more prehistoric, possibly resembling pterosaurs. More importantly, it's culturally significant. The Thunderbird isn't just a cryptid. It's a sacred being in many indigenous traditions. Investigating it requires far more cultural sensitivity and respect than something like the Loveland frog. This is Dr. Martinez's test. Can I conduct research that requires deep community engagement, genuine humility, and respect for perspectives that don't fit Western scientific frameworks? Can I handle something potentially dangerous, a large aerial predator, without reverting to reckless behavior? I spent 6 months preparing. Learning about Thunderbird traditions across different tribes, studying raptor biology and behavior, developing safety protocols for observing large aerial creatures. But most importantly, reaching out to Native communities to ask, not assume, whether they're willing to work with me at all. The Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes on the Flathead Reservation in Montana eventually agreed to meet with me, not to help me hunt their sacred being, but to discuss whether respectful research might be possible. That meeting is tomorrow. Everything depends on it. But before I get into that, I need to mention something that's been occupying my thoughts almost as much as the investigation itself. I heard from Lana. Interlude. An unexpected email. 2 weeks before I left for Montana, I received an email. The sender, Lana Morgan. I stared at it for probably 5 minutes before opening it. Heart pounding. We haven't spoken since she told me to get out of her hospital room 3 years ago. I've respected that silence, understanding she needed space and that I had no right to push for contact. The email was brief. Brendan, I heard through mutual friends that you're planning a Thunderbird investigation in Montana. I'm actually going to be in the area. I'm working on a conservation project for the Forest Service near Glacier National Park, studying wildlife corridor connectivity. I don't know if you want to meet up. I don't know if I want to meet up, but we'll be in the same region for the first time since the hospital, and it feels weird not to at least acknowledge that. I've been following your work peripherally. The Loveland investigation looked competent. Dr. Martinez speaks highly of your progress. That's something. I'm not saying I've forgiven you. I'm not sure I ever will, but I can acknowledge that you're trying, that you've put in years of actual work to be better. That matters. If you want to meet for coffee while we're both in Montana, let me know. No pressure. No expectations. Just maybe coffee. Lana. I read it probably 50 times, analyzing every word, every phrase, looking for clues about what she was thinking, what she wanted, whether this was an opening toward reconciliation or just polite acknowledgement. My therapist helped me process it. She's not offering forgiveness, Dr. Chun said. She's offering the possibility of neutral contact. That's significant after 3 years of complete silence, but it's not an invitation to rush toward reconciliation. Should I meet with her? Do you want to? Desperately. But I also don't want to hurt her more by pushing for something she's not ready for. Then be honest about that. Tell her you'd like to meet, but you'll respect whatever boundaries she sets. No expectations beyond coffee. Can you do that? I have to. I owe her that much. I responded that evening. Lana, I'd really like to meet for coffee. Whenever works for you, whatever boundaries you need. I have no expectations beyond the chance to see that you're okay and to thank you in person for acknowledging my efforts to be better. I'm in Montana January through March conducting the Thunderbird research. Let me know when and where. Brendan. She replied 2 days later with a date, time, and location in Kalispell. March 15th, assuming my investigation is still ongoing then. Neutral territory, public place, clear time frame. It's something. After 3 years of silence and guilt, it's something. But I can't let it distract from the work. The Thunderbird investigation requires my full attention, and I can't afford to screw it up because I'm preoccupied with the possibility of seeing Lana again. First things first, earn the right to conduct this research. Day 1, the meeting. I arrived at the Flathead Reservation on January 10th and spent 2 days simply being present before my scheduled meeting with the Tribal Council's Cultural Resources Department. Dr. Martinez had been clear, don't rush in demanding access. Show respect by taking time, being patient, understanding you're a guest asking for permission you may not receive. The meeting was with 3 people: Thomas Black Eagle, the Cultural Resources Director, Maria Two Knives, an elder and traditional knowledge keeper, and James McDonald, a wildlife biologist who works for the Tribal Conservation Program. I started by introducing myself honestly. My name is Brendan Winchester. I'm a field researcher working under Dr. Elena Martinez at UC Davis. I'm here to ask, not demand, permission to investigate Thunderbird reports in this region. But before I explain my research goals, I want to acknowledge several things. They listened, expressions neutral but attentive. First, I'm aware that the Thunderbird is sacred to many Indigenous peoples. I'm not here to exploit or disrespect that significance. Second, I'm young and relatively inexperienced. I've made serious mistakes in my work before, mistakes that hurt someone I cared about. I'm trying to learn from those mistakes and approach this work with genuine humility. Third, I'm here as a supplicant, not an authority. If you're not comfortable with this research, I'll leave and won't pursue it. Your perspectives and concerns are more important than my research goals. Thomas Black Eagle spoke first. You're honest about your inexperience. That's unusual. Most researchers who come here act like they're doing us a favor by being interested in our legends. I'm not. I'm asking for access to your knowledge and your land. That's a privilege, not a right. Maria Two Knives studied me for a long moment. You mentioned you've made mistakes that hurt someone. Tell me about that. So I did. I told them about Bray Road. The arrogance, the carelessness, Lana's attack, the 3 years of work since then to become someone better. I was honest about my failures because anything less would be disrespectful. When I finished, Maria nodded slowly. You carry that guilt. Good. Guilt makes you careful. The Thunderbird is not something to approach carelessly. I understand. James McDonald, the wildlife biologist, spoke next. What exactly are you hoping to do? Prove the Thunderbird exists? Capture evidence? I'm hoping to document whether there's any biological basis for the reports. If there is, if some large bird species is being misidentified or if there's something genuinely unknown, then I want to advocate for its protection and habitat conservation. If there isn't, I want to document that conclusively. But I emphasize this carefully. I'm aware that for many people, the Thunderbird's existence isn't a scientific question. It's a spiritual truth. I'm not here to disprove or validate anyone's beliefs. I'm just trying to understand if there's a physical creature that corresponds to some of the reports. And if we say no? Thomas asked. If we tell you that investigating the Thunderbird is disrespectful or unwelcome, then I leave and pursue a different investigation. Your sovereignty over your land and your cultural knowledge is absolute. I'm asking permission I may not deserve. They conferred quietly in their language for several minutes. Then Thomas turned back to me. We're going to say something you might not expect. We don't think the Thunderbird is just a bird. We believe it's a spiritual being, a manifestation of power and natural forces. But he held up a hand as I started to respond. We also acknowledge that non-native people have reported seeing very large birds in this region. Birds that might be golden eagles or condors or something else. We're not opposed to scientific investigation of those reports, as long as it's done respectfully. Maria will work with you, he continued. She'll share what can be shared about Thunderbird traditions, help you understand the cultural context, and guide you in conducting research that doesn't violate sacred knowledge. James will advise on the biological aspects and help with field safety. But understand, you're working with us, not for us. This is collaboration, not extraction of knowledge. I understand completely, and thank you. I'll do everything I can to honor your trust. Maria smiled slightly. We'll see. Young man with guilt can still be young man with poor judgment. We'll watch how you actually work, not just what you promise. Fair enough. Day 310. Cultural education. Before conducting any fieldwork, Maria insisted I spend time learning about Thunderbird traditions and their cultural significance. Not the sacred, restricted knowledge. She was clear that outsiders don't get access to that, but the general understanding that contextualizes the being. The Thunderbird is not a curiosity, she explained as we sat in the Tribal Cultural Center. It's a powerful being that brings storms, that can help or harm depending on its will and the respect shown to it. When you see storm clouds gathering over the mountains, that's the Thunderbird's presence. When lightning strikes, that's the Thunderbird's power. So it's metaphorical? Symbolic? It's both and neither. Western thinking wants everything to be either literal or metaphorical. Thunderbird is real, but real in ways your science doesn't have good frameworks for. It's a physical bird and a spiritual force, both at once. This was challenging for me to process. My training is scientific, empirical. But Dr. Martinez had warned me, Indigenous knowledge systems are sophisticated and valid. They're not primitive science waiting to be corrected by Western methods. They're different ways of understanding the world. You need to respect that difference even when you can't fully comprehend it. So I listened. I took notes. I asked questions respectfully and accepted when Maria said, "That's not something I can share with you," about certain aspects of the tradition. I learned that Thunderbird appears in many tribal traditions across North America, with variations in detail but consistent core elements. Enormous size, association with storms and thunder, immense power, demand for respect. I also learned about reported sightings that were more mundane, hunters or tribal members who'd seen very large birds that might be golden eagles or other raptors, exaggerated by distance or lighting into something more dramatic. Some people see eagles and think they see Thunderbird, Maria explained. Some people see Thunderbird and think they're seeing eagles. Both can be true. The physical and spiritual aren't as separate as you think. James McDonald, the wildlife biologist, gave me the biological context. We have golden eagles in this region, occasionally bald eagles, and very rarely California condors that wander this far north. There have been reports of birds significantly larger than any of those species, wingspans that witnesses estimate at 15 to 20 feet. Could they be mistaken? Sure. Distance makes things look bigger. But some reports come from experienced hunters who know what eagles look like. They're seeing something unusual. What do you think it is? Honestly, I don't know. Could be a remnant population of something we thought was extinct. Could be eagles with unusual genetics creating larger individuals. Could be something else. I'm open to investigating, as long as it's done without disturbing nesting sites or putting the researcher at unnecessary risk. Over those first 10 days, I also established safety protocols with James's help. Observing large raptors requires different approaches than ground-based cryptids. We identified safe observation points with good sightlines to likely flight paths, established communication protocols, and developed emergency procedures in case something went wrong. It was slow, methodical, respectful work. Exactly what Bray Road wasn't. Day 1120, Initial Observations. With Maria's blessing and James's guidance, I began systematic observations of areas where large bird sightings had been reported. The work was similar to Loveland, patient, boring, hours of watching skies and documenting normal wildlife. I saw plenty of golden eagles. Several were impressively large, with wingspans I estimated at 7 to 8 feet. In certain lighting or at certain distances, they could easily be perceived as much larger than they actually were. I also saw weather patterns that would make anyone believe in Thunderbird as spiritual force. Storms rolling over the mountains with dramatic intensity, lightning strikes that seemed almost purposeful, thunder that literally shook the ground. In those moments, the line between physical phenomenon and spiritual presence felt very thin. On day 16, I saw something unusual. I was at an observation point overlooking a valley when I spotted a large bird riding thermals at significant altitude. Even at distance, the size was striking. I grabbed my telephoto lens and captured several photographs. The wingspan was enormous. I estimated 12 to 15 feet based on comparing it to eagles I'd observed in similar positions. The silhouette was raptor-like but with proportions that seemed slightly off. The head appeared larger relative to body size than typical eagles, and the wing structure seemed broader. I watched it for approximately 10 minutes before it disappeared over the mountain ridge. The sighting was too distant for definitive identification, but it was genuinely unusual. That evening, I showed the photographs to James. He studied them carefully, comparing them to known raptor silhouettes. "That's interesting," he said finally. "Could be a California condor. They're rare up here but not impossible. Could be a golden eagle with unusual proportions. Or could be something else. The photos aren't clear enough to say definitively. Should I try to get closer observations? Not if it means disturbing the bird or putting yourself at risk. Respect requires distance. If it wants to be seen clearly, it'll come closer. If it doesn't, we respect that boundary." I appreciated that perspective. It aligned with everything I'd learned since Bray Road. You don't push, you don't chase, you don't demand what creatures aren't willing to give. Day 21. The storm. On day 21, a major storm system moved into the area. Maria had warned me, when big storms come, stay out of the backcountry. That's when Thunderbird is most active, and it's not safe for humans to be present. I respected that warning and stayed in town, documenting the storm from safe locations. The intensity was remarkable. Winds that bent trees nearly horizontal, lightning that seemed to strike every few seconds, thunder that felt like physical impacts. During a brief break in the weather, I went outside to check my equipment. That's when I saw it. Flying directly overhead, silhouetted against the storm clouds, was the largest bird I've ever seen. The wingspan was massive. I estimated 18 to 20 feet, possibly larger. It wasn't gliding or soaring. It was riding the wind with what seemed like purposeful control, moving through the storm with confidence rather than struggling against it. I grabbed my camera, but the lighting was terrible. The bird backlit against bright clouds. I got several shots but knew even as I took them that they'd be unclear, just a dark silhouette against gray sky. The bird, creature, whatever it was, flew in a wide circle over the town, then disappeared back into the storm. The whole sighting lasted maybe 2 minutes, but it was the clearest view I'd had, and it was genuinely extraordinary. That evening, I told Maria about it. She nodded as though she'd expected this. Thunderbird wanted you to see it. It wanted you to understand that it's real, that it's powerful, and that you're very small in comparison. That's the lesson. Now you carry that knowledge respectfully. Should I try to get better documentation? Do you need better documentation? You saw it. You know it's real. Why do you need to prove it to others who won't believe anyway? It was a challenging question. The scientist in me wanted clear photos, video, measurable evidence. But the person I was becoming, the one shaped by Bray Road's lessons and 3 years of learning, understood her point. I'd witnessed something extraordinary. That experience had value independent of whether I could prove it to skeptics. Sometimes witnessing is enough. Day 2240. Systematic documentation. Despite Maria's perspective, I continued systematic observations for another 3 weeks. Not chasing the Thunderbird or trying to force encounters, but maintaining my observation posts and documenting what appeared naturally. I saw the large birds 3 more times. Always distant, always brief. I collected photographs that were interesting but not definitive, recorded measurements that were suggestive but not conclusive. I also interviewed several tribal members who'd had sightings, a hunter who'd seen something massive fly overhead while he was elk hunting, A woman who'd watched a bird she estimated at 15 feet wingspan catch and carry off a small deer. An elder who'd seen Thunderbird during ceremonies and was clear it was both physical and spiritual. Every interview added context and nuance. The picture that emerged was complex. Something large and unusual definitely lived in this region. Whether it was a rare known species, an unknown species, or something that transcended simple biological categories, I couldn't determine definitively. James and I also conducted habitat analysis. The region had sufficient prey base to support large raptors, deer, elk, smaller mammals, fish. The mountainous terrain provided ideal hunting grounds and nesting sites. If something like a very large eagle or condor existed here, it could survive. We're probably looking at a small population, James suggested. Maybe half a dozen individuals maximum. Rare enough that they're rarely seen, but present enough that they're occasionally documented. Whether they're a known species or something else, they deserve protection and habitat preservation. That became our recommendation. Regardless of taxonomy, the region needed protection as potential critical habitat for large raptors. Conserve the ecosystem and whatever lives in it will benefit. It was a satisfying conclusion, one that didn't require definitive proof or dramatic claims, just careful documentation supporting practical conservation. Day 45. Maria's blessing. Before leaving Montana, I met with Maria one final time. She'd been observing my work throughout, not just the field work but how I interacted with people, how I respected boundaries, how I handled ambiguous results. "You did acceptable work," she said, which from her was high praise. "You listened more than you talked. You respected when we said no. You didn't push for things you weren't entitled to. And you understood, maybe not completely but enough, that some knowledge isn't meant to be possessed, just witnessed. Thank you for guiding me. I learned more from you than I did from the fieldwork." Good. That means you were paying attention. The Thunderbird is still out there. It will remain out there whether humans document it or not. Your job isn't to prove anything. Your job is to be a good guest in its home, and you did that adequately. Can I come back? If there's future research that would be appropriate. Maybe. We'll see. You've shown you can do the work respectfully, but once doesn't make a pattern. If you continue growing, continue learning, continue being humble instead of arrogant, then perhaps. But that's for future Maria to decide, not current Maria. Fair enough. She smiled. And young man, whatever happened in Wisconsin, whatever guilt you carry, you're using it well. Keep doing that. Let the mistakes make you careful, not paralyzed. After leaving Maria's office, I walked to a viewpoint overlooking the valley. Storm clouds were gathering over the mountains. Thunderbird weather, Maria would call it. I thought about the massive bird I'd seen, about the question of whether it was a physical creature or spiritual being or somehow both. I thought about how 3 years ago I would have obsessed over proof, over capturing definitive evidence, over making dramatic claims, and how now I was content with witnessing, with respecting ambiguity, with accepting that some mysteries don't need solving. That's growth. Not exciting growth, not dramatic transformation. Just slow, steady movement toward being someone who can be trusted with mysteries instead of someone who destroys them through carelessness. It was time to meet Lana. Interlude, Coffee in Kalispell. March 15th. The day I'd been anticipating and dreading in equal measure for 2 months. I arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early, too nervous to risk being late. Found a table with good visibility, ordered tea I barely touched, and tried to calm the racing thoughts about what I would say, how she would react, whether this would be healing or just another reminder of what I'd destroyed. She arrived exactly on time, saw me, hesitated for just a moment at the door, then walked over. "Brendan, Lana, thank you for meeting me." She sat across from me, and for the first time in 3 years, I really looked at her. She looked good, healthy, confident, like someone who'd processed trauma and come through it stronger. But I could see the scar tissue on her shoulder where her shirt collar didn't quite cover it. Could see a tension in how she held herself, like she was ready to bolt if this went badly. "You look different," she said. "Older, more serious. I feel about 100 years older than the kid who took you to Bray Road." "Good. You should." We ordered coffee, made awkward small talk about Montana, about her Forest Service work, about the weather, dancing around everything that really mattered. Finally, she said, "I've been following your work. I read your Loveland report. It was competent, boring, methodical, safe. Nothing like Bray Road. That's the highest compliment I could receive, given everything. I also talked to Dr. Martinez. She says you've put in real work, that you're actually learning instead of just performing growth. That matters to me. Lana, I need to say something, and I need you to just let me say it without responding. Okay?" She nodded. "I'm sorry. I've said that before, but I need to say it again now that we're face to face. I was arrogant and careless and stupid, and you paid the price for my failures. You trusted me, and I betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. The physical scars, the psychological trauma, the destroyed friendship, all of that is on me. I can't undo it, can't make it right, can't earn forgiveness. But I want you to know that I think about what happened every single day. Every investigation I plan, every safety protocol I follow, every time I choose caution over ambition. I'm doing it because of what I did to you. Your suffering taught me lessons I should have learned without hurting anyone. That's not redemption, but it's purpose. It's ensuring that what happened to you actually changed something, that it made me better so it never happens to anyone else." I stopped, throat tight, hands shaking slightly. Lana was quiet for a long moment, looking down at her coffee. "You've apologized before," she said finally. "In the hospital, in emails I never answered. But this is the first time I believe you actually understand what you're apologizing for. Not just the injuries, but the betrayal of trust. The fact that you promised me I'd be safe and then made decisions that guaranteed I wouldn't be. I understand. I'm so sorry. I know. And Brendan, I need you to understand something too. I'm not here to forgive you. I'm not ready for that, and I might never be. The nightmares have mostly stopped, but the shoulder still hurts when it rains. I still can't go camping, still can't be in rural areas at night without panic attacks. You took something from me that I can't get back. I know, but..." She looked up, met my eyes. "I can acknowledge that you're trying, that you've spent 3 years actually doing the work instead of just saying the right words, that you've become competent and careful and humble. That matters. It doesn't erase what happened, but it matters. Thank you for acknowledging that, for giving me the chance to say this in person." We talked for another hour. Not about Bray Road, we'd said what needed to be said about that. About our lives since. Her environmental work, my research. The people we'd become in the 3 years since that night. As we were preparing to leave, Lana said, "I don't know if we'll ever be friends again, but maybe we don't have to be enemies or strangers. Maybe we can just be people who knew each other, who went through something terrible together, who are both trying to move forward. I would take that. That would be more than I deserve. It's not about deserving, Brendan. It's about whether I can exist in the same world as you without it hurting. And I think, maybe, I'm getting there." We exchanged phone numbers, made no promises about staying in touch, no plans to meet again. Just left it open, a possibility instead of a door permanently closed. Walking back to my truck, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. A tiny measure of peace. Not forgiveness, Lana was clear about that, but acknowledgement, recognition that the work I'd been doing mattered, that the guilt I carried was being used productively. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. Conclusions. The Thunderbird exists. I'm confident in that statement, though I can't prove it to scientific standards. I saw something in the Montana skies that doesn't match known bird species. Something massive, powerful, and genuinely extraordinary. Whether it's an unknown species, a rare population of known species with unusual characteristics, something that transcends simple biological categories, a physical manifestation of spiritual forces. I cannot determine, and Maria taught me that's okay. Not every mystery requires a definitive answer. Some require respectful witnessing and careful stewardship. What I documented: multiple sightings of birds with wingspans estimated at 12 to 20 feet. Photographs showing unusually large raptors, though not definitively. Consistent testimony from credible witnesses across decades. Habitat analysis supporting the presence of large predators. Cultural context explaining the Thunderbird's significance. Recommendations. Habitat protection for the region as potential critical raptor territory. Continued monitoring by tribal wildlife management. Respect for indigenous perspectives on the Thunderbird. No further intrusive research without tribal approval. Recognition that some phenomena exist at the intersection of physical and spiritual realities. What I learned. This investigation taught me that cryptid research requires cultural humility as much as scientific rigor. That indigenous knowledge systems are sophisticated and valid, not primitive beliefs waiting to be corrected. That some mysteries don't need solving, they need respecting. I learned that witnessing without possessing is a valid form of knowledge. That accepting ambiguity is sometimes more honest than forcing certainty. That my job as a researcher isn't always to prove things exist. Sometimes it's just to be a good guest in territories where extraordinary beings live. Most importantly, I learned that I'm capable of handling complex, culturally sensitive investigations without reverting to the arrogant carelessness that defined Bray Road. That 3 years of work have genuinely changed how I approach this field. Personal reflection. 3 years and counting. 3 years since Bray Road. 2 successful investigations completed. Loveland and Thunderbird. Slowly building competence and trust with mentors like Dr. Martinez and communities like the Flathead Reservation. And now, a conversation with Lana that didn't end in anger or permanent separation. Not reconciliation, she was clear about that, but the possibility of eventually existing in each other's lives without it being unbearably painful. That's more than I dared hope for. The guilt hasn't disappeared. I don't think it should. Every time I plan an investigation, I see Lana's face in the hospital. That memory keeps me careful, keeps me humble, keeps me from ever taking safety for granted. But the guilt is productive now, not destructive. It motivates without paralyzing. It reminds me why this work matters and why doing it right is more important than doing it dramatically. Dr. Martinez called after I sent her my preliminary Thunderbird report. This is sophisticated work, Brendan. You handled cultural sensitivity well, you respected boundaries, you accepted ambiguous results without trying to force certainty. You're ready for more challenging investigations. How challenging? Not Wendigo or Dogman level, those require decades of experience. But maybe something like the Chupacabra or Dover Demon. Creatures that might be aggressive but aren't apex predators. We'll discuss options when you're back in California. I'm ready for that progression. Not eager to rush into danger, but confident I can handle intermediate-level challenges without catastrophic failures. The conversation with Lana reinforced something my therapist has been saying. Recovery isn't linear, and neither is becoming a competent researcher. There will be setbacks, mistakes, moments when old patterns emerge. The goal isn't perfection. It's consistent effort toward improvement. 3 years of that effort have produced 2 successful investigations with no injuries, relationships with mentors and communities built on respect, a framework for ethical research that prioritizes safety and cultural sensitivity. The possibility, just the possibility, of eventually rebuilding what Bray Road destroyed. It's not enough. It will never be enough to undo what happened to Lana. But it's progress. And right now, that's all I can ask for. Looking forward. Next steps. Return to California, write the full Thunderbird report, consult with Dr. Martinez about future investigations. Maybe the Chupacabra in the Southwest, maybe the Dover Demon in Massachusetts. Something that continues building my skills without putting me in situations I'm not prepared for. I'm also going to stay in touch with Lana. Not pushing, not demanding anything, just being available if she wants occasional contact. Respecting whatever pace she sets, whatever boundaries she needs. The Thunderbird is still flying over Montana. The Loveland frog, if it exists, is still living near the Little Miami River. And I'm still learning, still growing, still trying to become someone who can investigate these mysteries responsibly. Some journeys take years. Some take decades. Some never fully complete. You just keep traveling, keep improving, keep trying to be better than you were. 3 years into this journey, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I was at Bray Road either. That's enough to keep going. Brendan Winchester, field researcher, UC Davis Cryptid Research Project. March 2035. The Thunderbird exists in the mountains of Montana, something massive and extraordinary that demands respect and humility. I documented it carefully, respected cultural boundaries, and accepted that some mysteries transcend simple proof. 3 years after Bray Road, I'm finally becoming the kind of researcher who can handle complex investigations without destroying lives. Lana acknowledges that progress, even if she can't forgive what led to it. That acknowledgement means everything. The work continues. The growth continues. And for the first time since that terrible night in Wisconsin, I have hope that someday I might actually deserve to call myself a cryptozoologist. Addendum. Dr. Martinez's note. Included with permission, the Thunderbird investigation represents significant growth for Brendan Winchester. He navigated complex cultural dynamics with genuine respect, maintained proper safety protocols throughout, and accepted ambiguous results without trying to force certainty. More importantly, he's developing the kind of judgment that distinguishes competent researchers from reckless ones. He knows when to push and when to respect boundaries. He understands that indigenous perspectives are valid knowledge systems, not primitive beliefs. He's learned that witnessing without possessing is a legitimate form of research. He's ready for more challenging work. Not the most dangerous cryptids. He'll probably never be suited for Wendigo or Dogman-level investigations, but intermediate challenges where his developing skills can be tested without catastrophic risk. The Bray Road incident will always define him. That's appropriate, but it's no longer limiting him. He's transformed catastrophic failure into careful methodology, and that transformation is worth acknowledging. Progress continues. Dr. Elena Martinez, UC Davis. Postscript. A text message. 3 days after returning to California, I received a text from Lana. Saw online that your Thunderbird investigation got mentioned in a Native American conservation newsletter. The Flathead Tribal Council praised your respectful approach. That's real progress, Brendan. Keep doing the work. I read it probably 20 times. Analyzed every word, every implication. But my therapist helped me see it simply. Lana was acknowledging continued growth, offering encouragement without commitment. That's more than enough. The work continues. The growth continues. And somewhere in Montana, the Thunderbird still rides the storm winds, indifferent to human attempts to document or understand it, as it should be. End of report. 3 years of work. 2 successful investigations. 1 conversation that offered possibility instead of permanent closure. The journey from catastrophic failure to competent researcher continues. Slowly, carefully, with guilt as motivation and humility as foundation. The Thunderbird taught respect. Lana taught hope. Both lessons matter. Both will shape everything that comes next.